thank you, everyone here, and to the Foundation for bestowing this honor on us, and to also the hardworking people at Cybergenetics, some of whom are represented, who do this work. I thought that instead of going through the 500 cases or so we've gone through, or that have helped prosecutors and innocence groups and defenders, the World Trade Center, all kinds of different projects we've worked on, I would just tell you a story of one case that it was featured in 48 Hours on CBS. It was called Guilty Until Proven Innocent, and a lot of the details are there. So this is a crime that was happening around 1989 in Gary, Indiana. They were bumped rapes, and 5 men were going around robbing people, then beating them up and robbing them, and then beating them up and raping them and robbing them. And 5 men were arrested who actually had nothing to do with the crime. It's a long story, but they had nothing to do with it. But there was no major evidence. There was some DNA that pointed the other way. No one understood it at the time. And 2 of the men, Darryl, Pinkins, and Roosevelt Glenn, were convicted and sentenced to long prison terms. And as Roosevelt Glenn, who's a deeply religious man, expressed in 48 Hours in his book, Innocent Nightmare, he was waiting for some lawyer to come and save him. He waited about 7 years, and in the late 90s, law professor Frances Watson, she came to the aid of these 2 men. She looked at the record and said, "This is ridiculous." And in the process of looking at everything and filing her motions from the Wrongful Conviction Center, they got new DNA analysis, and in 2001 they had DNA. Now, the way you hear the stories, that means it's done, they have DNA. That isn't how DNA works. Most DNA evidence is a mixture of 2 or more people. You can have 5 people on a handgun. It's complex. And with simple DNA, crime labs will comfortably give an answer. And when DNA is not simple, the answer is usually inconclusive, because with the naked eye and the training they have, there's not much more they can do. And that's what happened. So after waiting in jail for 10 years, the DNA came back with 2 profiles, one from the victim's jacket, one from the sweater, and the major contributor that made up 80 or 90% of each of these profiles was clear, and the court said, no way. There were 5 people who were assailants. I want 5 profiles. This went up to the appellate courts, and so the men stayed in jail. And they waited another 7 years. And they waited another 7 years. Now, in the interim, we had developed this TrueAllele technology, which is it's unique in that it's unbiased, it's objective, it's accurate, it's what you expect a computer to do. You put data in, and it unmixes mixtures, and then you can make a comparison, and it doesn't take sides. Most of our cases are with prosecutors, because those are most of the cases that come in, but we do a lot of cases for defenders as well. This was a pro bono case that we worked on for a year or so. And in this case, the technology was able to do a number of things that people couldn't do. Professor Watson and I gave a talk on this earlier this year. I won't go into it. There were 5 completely different things the technology could do by computer. Looking at different evidence, comparing evidence to evidence, it was able to produce exculpatory or exclusionary statistics, that isn't what people can do. It was able to show that these men who committed the crime, 3 of them were brothers, and none of the people who were accused were brothers. Basically, the evidence was so overwhelming by pulling out 5% and the 10% of minor contributors that just before I was going to fly out to a hearing a year and a half ago, the district attorney dropped the charges. And basically just let Darryl Pinkins out of jail after he'd been in jail for 24 years. Roosevelt Glenn had been pardoned after 17 years. And they were both fully exonerated this year. So that's what can happen with this kind of technology. In the the state of Georgia, GBI, the laboratory has obtained the technology, and they're bringing it on board. We hope they'll be using it within the year. And so the question is, how do you bring more science into justice? The biggest problem is actually the education of lawyers. I mean, if any of you are lawyers and know lawyers, most of them are not rocket scientists. You show them E equals MC squared, they have a heart attack. And so bringing in scientific evidence is very, very hard, particularly for defendants. They don't have the resources at all. Prosecutors may be able to develop resources for it. But it's very unfamiliar to them. They're history majors, they're philosophy majors. Fortunately, the computer makes the evidence simpler. We've developed, once you separate and untangle a mess, it's much easier to explain it to a jury. And that's what we do. We put a lot of effort into how do you teach a jury for half an hour what this all means. So it isn't just magic. A lot of work goes into validations as well. So towards that end, I and my wife, who's here, Dr. David, we founded a nonprofit this year, Justice Through Science, and the purpose of that organization is to educate attorneys and to provide free services for people who can't afford this type of technology. We're having a conference in Pittsburgh in 2 months. It'll be free. It's sponsored through the courts. And some of this, we'll have a prosecutor there, judge, we'll have defenders, but basically crime labs, everybody's represented. And we'll also have Professor Watson speaking. She'll be getting an award. And we'll also have Mr. Roosevelt Glenn talking about his experience as somebody who was wrongfully convicted in jail for 17 years. And I'd like to thank the foundation because the award that you're giving us is going to the foundation so we can actually have this conference. So thank you very much.